So like many of you here, I was a student, and I'm that first generation of person who most of their parents went to college before them. I wasn't that fortunate. My dad was a Greek immigrant, and when he was 40 years old, he was a waiter in a restaurant, and he married my mother, who was 30 at the time. My mother graduated from high school and was a secretary, and my dad was a waiter. And I was born late in life. I'm an only child. And they tried to instill in me that education was important, which I always found ironic since they never went to college. And sometimes when they'd be grinding me to get good grades, I'd say, easy to say, but how come you didn't do it? And we would joke because they would say, well, the American dream and what we're going to program you for, which hasn't changed, is you'll work real hard in school and you'll get good grades. And if you get good grades, you'll get a good job. And if you get a good job, you'll make a lot of money. And if you make a lot of money, you'll be successful. And that's kind of where it ended. And so we're programmed for that. So I went to Georgetown, I worked really hard, I got lucky, I studied, and I think I graduated first in my class. I won some award, I was one of the speakers at graduation, and I got a job, and then I had an idea. I was at a grocery store, and there was a TV guide. And I had never seen a TV guide in my house. And the TV guy said, the #1 best-selling magazine in America. I'll never forget that. He said, I can't believe I've never held in my hand the #1 best-selling magazine in America. And I pulled it off the shelf and opened it up. And the front of the book is interviews with TV stars and directors and producers. And the back of the book was listings of what programs played on what networks at what time. And I'm thinking, I can't believe this #1 best-selling magazine in America. Threw it away, and after dinner went into my little home office and sat in front of an Apple II computer. This is 1979, 1980, with 2 software programs on the side. And I remember looking at it and saying, wow, this looks like a TV. It's got a screen, and these are programs, and TV Guide was talking about programs, and they talk about networks. And I just heard this guy, Dr. Bob Metcalf, talking about the Ethernet network. And I said, I bet you one day all this stuff is going to look the same, that you won't be able to distinguish a computer from a television, and networks, everything will flow over, networks will be digitized, and there's probably a business here. And so my first business, I was 25 years old, was a business called LIST, Leonsis Index to Software Technology. And I created a database of every product and every piece of software that worked on every computer platform. And raised $1 million in venture capital, quit my job, obviously, started this company, and 2 years later I sold it for $60 million. Now, that was something. My mom and dad had never made more than $28,000 between them. And so I did what most young kids who get signed as first-round picks in the NBA would do. My mom and dad never owned a home. They always rented. I bought them a house. My dad never had a new car. I always had bought used cars. I'll never forget this. I took him to buy the car, and he was insisting that he didn't need air conditioning in the car. Nah, I don't need air conditioning. They're trying to rip you off. And so I have great empathy, by the way, for young people who come into a lot of money. And so I lived through the programming. I studied, I worked real hard, I started a business, I became successful, and it was kind of empty. And I was on this treadmill working really, really fast, and then I got on the wrong airplane. And as you'll read in my book, everything that could go wrong with the plane happened, and the plane was going down, and I started praying. People were crying, people were praying. All you're prepared by the airlines to do is fasten your seatbelt, put your head down, and brace. That is the preparation you're given on an airline. And so I started praying. I'm not very religious. And as I got a little bit in the prayer, I actually started laughing because all I could think of was, oh yes, God is tuned in to this little moment, to my prayer. And if there is God, he's probably saying, oh sure, now you need me. And so I said, well, I'm not going to be inauthentic. I'm a salesperson. Let's cut a deal. I will leave more than I take. I'll do good. I'll play offense with the rest of my life. That was kind of the basic deal. And you always hear about people who want to die with a smile on their face. When the plane was going down, I'll be honest with you, it was weeping, crying, angst, suffering, pain. Nobody that I could see was at peace. And that really struck me because I was programmed like everyone to win. And I had kind of won. Yet I was pretty unfulfilled. So when the plane landed, it's ironic, it's like they give you tickets to get on another plane. So that following weekend, I knew I had to change, and so I made a list. It's a very feeble attempt. 101 things to do before I die. Go to my blog, you'll see the list. What I've since come to realize is that I had a reckoning. And everyone in the room will have a reckoning. Further, every business that you're associated with will have a reckoning. And reckonings, someone's going to break your heart. You're going to have a financial setback. An aspiration that you have, you won't be able to live up to. There'll be a financial setback. There'll be someone will die who's close to you. You'll have health issues. We all have reckonings. Life is filled with reckonings. Businesses are filled with reckonings. And I made a life list. That was my first answer to my reckoning. Professionally, I've built a lot of value for people. AOL's had its issues, obviously. But during the 90s, we built the most equity value of any company in America during those 10 years. If you put $1 into AOL, I think it ended up being worth $1,100. It's pretty good. And now, and what I learned there is this double bottom line mantra. I only work on businesses that can do well by doing good. I was introduced with Snag Films. And please go to snagfilms.com. Do not go to stagfilms.